This talk was given by Roshi Martin, guiding teacher of the Endless Path Zendo, a lay Buddhist community in Rochester, New York. Join our practice, in person or online, at endlesspathzendo.org.
So today is Saturday, June 6th, 2026. Special day personally and nationally and universally. It's the anniversary of D-Day. It's also our son Jake's 56th birthday, so lots to celebrate. And today we're going to pause. I'll pause in the reading of Zen Life of Bodhisattvas. We finished the Manjushri Teishos, and before we go on to the Teishos on Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva of Great Compassion, or Kandon, because we have, I'll be at the AZTA, American Zen Teachers Association meeting this coming week. Then the following Saturday, once we're reopened, we will have Jukai. There will be Doksan that morning as well. It'll be, Jukai will take place during the regular morning practice. Check the schedule, please. But because of that, I'd like to read Aitken Roshi on the nature of the precepts as preparation for Jukai. This is from a really terrific book of his, The Mind of Clover, Essays in Zen Buddhist Ethics by Robert Aitken. And before we begin, I'd like to talk for a few moments about what's known as the three aspects as one in the precepts. These are the literal, the bodhisattvic, and the absolute perspectives, which is how we eventually come to examine each of the 16 bodhisattva precepts in our way of practicing. So, briefly, if we take the first precept, not to kill, but to cherish all life. The first precept taken literally is, do not kill. That's it. You just don't do that. You don't kill things, period. That's the literal. The bodhisattvic, of course, could be don't kill time, don't kill someone else's aspiration by belittling someone. Don't kill a book by folding a page and leaving it upside down to mark your place. Don't kill the water structures of the world by leaving lights on unnecessarily and causing generators hundreds of miles away to keep running and water flowing through them unnecessarily, and so on. Bodhisattva can also mean a very different stance on a precept, let's say, not to kill. So there's a famous story in Tibetan Buddhism going back to the 11th or 12th century of a very bad king, Langdharma, who came into power in Tibet. And the story goes that there was a black hat festival, ceremony, I guess, where monks do this dance wearing this kind of flat black hat and black robes, and they whirl around. And so one of the monks, Langdharma, was quite an evil man. He was destroying monasteries, he was harming monks and other ordained nuns, lay people as well. He was destroying people's chances of awakening and creating terrible karma for himself for doing murderous and thuggish things. So there was this black hat ceremony, and the monks are whirling around, and Langdharma is there in the celebrity box watching the ceremony, which takes place in an open courtyard. The temple is kind of built around that in Tibet. And one of the monks, as he swings around, slews an arrow out of his sleeve, and it strikes Langdharma and kills him. And then the monk scooted off. As he ran, he flipped his robe around, and the outside was black, but the inside was white. And he jumped on a black horse and swam the river, and the horse was only painted black, and underneath it was gray or a different color, and he got away. He had killed Langdharma. His motivation had been compassionate. One, to save Langdharma from creating worse and worse karma for himself, and ending up in one of the lowest hells, and also to protect people's potential to realize awakening and deepen their connection with wisdom and compassion in their life, which Langdharma was destroying. So a bodhisattvic take, and then the monk had to fully accept the karma of what he had done. But his motivation had been bodhisattvic. So that was a bodhisattvic take on the precept not to kill, but to cherish all life. Then finally, there's the absolute perspective, which we do with each of the 16 bodhisattva precepts. From the absolute perspective, there is no one doing the killing, and there is no one being killed. There is no killing. And to uphold the absolute perspective on this precept, as with all the precepts, we must keep working at this, because to actually live in that realm is very difficult, very, very refined. And it's very easy to delude oneself. So you have to, the way to uphold the absolute aspect is to keep working at it, to never give up and work towards deeper realization, not just a repeat, but to realize this fully and to awaken fully is the way to uphold the absolute aspect of the precept not to kill, but to cherish all life. So just as a foundation for our Jukai, I mentioned these three aspects as one, which is the foundation of essentially what we'll do in Jukai, which is receive the precepts and vow to uphold them from a variety of perspectives and let them really function in our life, so that our Zen is not just something on the mat, but something we live and can mature through as human beings on this world and at this time. So now, Aitken Roshi on the nature of the precepts. The precepts of Zen Buddhism derive from the rules that governed the Sangha, or community of monks and nuns who gathered about Shakyamuni Buddha. As the religion of Buddhism developed through the Mahayana schools, the meaning of Sangha broadened to include all beings, not just monks and nuns, and not just human beings. Community continues to be a treasure of the religion today, and the precepts continue to be a guide. My purpose in this book, Aitken Roshi is saying, is to clarify them for Western students of Buddhism as a way to help make Buddhism a daily practice. Without the precepts as guidelines, Zen Buddhism tends to become a hobby, made to fit the needs of the ego. Selflessness, as taught in the Zen Center, conflicts with the indulgence that is encouraged by society. I mean, how many ads say, you deserve this? Whether it's ice cream or a new car or a Rolex watch, you deserve this. The self-indulgence encouraged by society. The student is drawn back and forth from outside to within the Zen Center. Of course, here we're just a small temple, a zendo really, and so we tend to hide out less than is possible for people who belong to a large center. There's upsides to every form of practice and downsides. We have our own problems as something very small, but we also have intimacy, less hierarchy, and less a chance to bubble ourselves up into it. We are always engaged with life as lay practitioners at a temple. In any case, the student is drawn back and forth from outside to within the Zen Center, tending to use the center as a sanctuary from the difficulties experienced in the world. In my view, the true Zen Buddhist center is not a mere sanctuary, but a source from which ethically motivated people move outward to engage in the larger community. This is an important point. Don't let it go by too easily. There are different sets of precepts depending on the teachings of the various schools of Buddhism. In the Harada-Yasutani line of Zen, which of course is what we are, both from the Kapleau side and from the Aitken side, which derives from the Soto school, the 16 Bodhisattva precepts are studied and followed. These begin with the 3 vows of refuge. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha can be understood here to mean realization, truth, and harmony. These 3 vows of refuge are central to the ceremony of initiation to Buddhism in all of its schools. That ceremony, of course, is Jukai, which is what we'll be taking. If you find that your head is slumped forward, you're likely to fall asleep. Keeping your head upright helps, even if you've had a sleepless night. It can help to keep the spine and head upright, and the eyes are just lowered, but the head doesn't slump. If you can do that, it can be helpful. In any case, the way of applying these vows in daily life is presented by the 3 pure precepts, which derive from a gatha, that is a didactic verse, in the Dhammapada and other early Buddhist books. And that goes, renounce all evil, practice all good, keep your mind pure, thus all the Buddhas taught. In Mahayana Buddhism, these lines underwent a change, reflecting a shift from the ideal of personal perfection to the ideal of oneness with all beings. The last line was dropped and the third rewritten, so it now reads, or goes, renounce all evil, practice all good, save the many beings. Renounce all evil, practice all good, save the many beings. These simple moral injunctions are then explicated in detail in the 10 grave precepts. Not killing, not stealing, not misusing sex, and so on. These 16 Bodhisattva precepts are accepted by the Zen student in the ceremony called Jukai, which literally means receiving the precepts, in which the student acknowledges the guidance of the Buddha. They are studied privately with the Roshi, the teacher, but are not taken up in teisho or discussed at any length in Zen commentaries. I think the reason for this esotericism is the fear of misunderstanding. So when somebody here at Endless Path wants to receive a Roxu and Buddhist name, they would personalize the precepts, and that involves a back and forth over weeks, if not months, with myself and the student, refining what they're saying in each of their personalized 16 vows to go with the 16 Bodhisattva precepts until that's all clear. It's really that their understanding of the precept is really as clear as it can be at this point, and they actually have a concrete and specific way of actualizing or embodying that in their life. So Aitken Roshi goes on. The point there I was making is that tends to stay private between the student and myself. It's not generally, precepts are not generally talked about, but Aitken Roshi did and Palolo Roshi did for a reason, which was that precepts are not taken up as koans until one has completed all the rest of the koan lineage, which means the foundation of ethics is hardly addressed in traditional Zen training until towards the very end. That Aitken Roshi was a lay teacher with a lay community, and Palolo Roshi, of course, was a parent, had had a life in the world, and a very significant one, was very aware of lay responsibilities, and so both of them felt that, especially given the ethical challenges that Zen Buddhist teachers coming from Japan were facing and failing in some cases, that speaking about the precepts was an important responsibility that any Zen teacher in the current world would have to take up earlier in the practice and not wait till people individually were working on the precepts as koans. Again, this is something we can do individually with anyone who wants to receive a Rakusu in Buddhist name. If you've been practicing with me for 3 years and are interested in doing so, you then just email me and we can talk about how to begin that. In any case, when Bodhidharma, to return to Aitken Roshi, when Bodhidharma says that in self-nature there is no thought of killing, again, this is absolute perspective. As he does in his comment on the first grave precept, this was his way of saving all beings. When Dogen Kigen Zenji says that you should forget yourself, as he does throughout his writing, this was his way of teaching openness to the mind of the universe. However, it seems that teachers worry that no thought of killing and forgetting the self could be misunderstood to mean that one has license to do anything, so long as one does it forgetfully. I agree with the pure words of Bodhidharma and Dogen Zenji, I agree that they can be misunderstood. That is, but for this very reason, I think it is the responsibility of Zen teachers to interpret them correctly. Takuan, Soho Zenji, fails to live up to this responsibility, it seems to me, in his instructions to a samurai. Aitken Roshi was very, very, very strong on this point, calling out this sense of emptiness as an ethically gray area. So here he quotes a Takuan, a famous teacher in Japan, the last 150 years or so, I'm weak on dates. And anyway, here's what Takuan wrote. The uplifted sword has no will of its own. It is all of emptiness. It is like a flash of lightning. The man who is about to be struck down is also of emptiness, as is the one who wields the sword. Do not get your mind stopped with the sword you raise. Forget about what you are doing and strike the enemy. Do not keep your mind on the person before you. They are all of emptiness, but beware of your mind being caught in emptiness. Aitken Roshi continues. The devil quotes sutras, scripture, and that is, the devil quotes scripture, and Mara, the incarnation of ignorance, can quote the Abhidharma. The fallacy of the way of the samurai is similar to the fallacy of the code of the crusader. Both distort what should be a universal view into an argument for partisan warfare. The Catholic charity of the Holy See did not include the people it called pagans. The vow of Takuan Zenji to save all beings did not encompass the one he called the enemy. This is very different from the celebrated koan of Nanchuan killing the cat. The priest Nanchuan found monks of the eastern and western halls arguing about a cat. He held up the cat and said, "Everyone, if you can say something, I will spare this cat. If you can't say anything, I will cut off its head." No one could say anything, so Nanchuan, or Nansen, cut the cat in two. Like all koans, this is a folk story, expressive of essential nature as it shows up in a particular setting. The people who object to its violence are those who refuse to read fairy tales to their children. Fairy tales have an inner teaching which children grasp intuitively, and koans are windows onto spiritual knowledge. Fairy tales do not teach people to grind up bones of Englishmen to make bread, and koans do not instruct us to go around killing pets. I think that's a great summation by Aitken Roshi. Fairy tales do not teach people to grind up bones of Englishmen to make bread, and koans do not instruct us to go around killing pets. Please keep these things in mind. Our tendency to literalize will be the death of us. In any case, spiritual knowledge is a powerful tool. Certain teachings of Zen Buddhism and certain elements of its practice can be abstracted and used for secular purposes. Some of them benign, such as achievement in sports. Some nefarious, such as murder for hire. To comment here, this is one of the dangers of mindfulness abstracted from its ethically Buddhist foundations. I will be mindful as I make a killing in the market. I will be mindful as maybe I make a killing literally. I'm mindful, that's the point. So a mindfulness abstracted from ethics can end up misguiding us, like Takuan and his emptiness. Something to be aware of. It's a discussion in the culture today. What is the deal with mindfulness, and can it really be taken out of its religious context, and is it really healthy? In any case, the Buddha Dharma, with its integration of wisdom and compassion, must be taught in its fullness. Otherwise, its parts can be poisoned when they are misused. Buddha Dharma here means Buddhist doctrine, but Dharma has a broader meaning than doctrine. And indeed, it carries with it an entire culture of meaning. Misunderstanding of the precepts begins with misunderstanding of the Dharma, and likewise clear insight into the Dharma opens the way to upright practice. First of all, the Dharma is the mind, not merely the brain or the human spirit. Mind, with a capital letter, if you like. It is vast and fathomless, pure and clear, altogether empty and charged with possibilities. It is the unknown, the unnameable, from which and as which all beings come forth. Our sense of self comes forth from this mind. And of course, we might find many versions of self lurking in that mind as we each personally experience it. In any case, second, these beings that come forth also are the Dharma. People are beings, and so are animals and plants, so are stones and clouds, so are postulations and images that appear in dreams. The Dharma is phenomena and the world of phenomena. Interesting point. So are stones and clouds, so are postulations and images that appear in dreams. The Dharma is phenomena and the world of phenomena. Third, the Dharma is the interaction of phenomena and the law of that interaction. Dharma and its translations mean law in all the languages of Buddhist lineage. Sanskrit, Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Cambodian, which Aitken Roshi doesn't mention, Korean. The Dharma is the law of the universe, a law that may be expressed simply: one thing depends upon another. This is the world of relativity. A tree is only large relative to a pencil. So what's its absolute size? A mountain is only big relative to an ant. But it might be small relative to the distance from the earth to the sun. So relative, if one thing depends upon another, then again, cause leads to effect, which in turn is cause leading to effect in an infinite dynamic web of endless dimensions. The operation of this law, or this aspect of Dharma, is called karma. Many people feel there is something mechanical in the karmic interpretation of the Dharma. Cause and effect, however dynamic, can imply something blind. So it is important to understand that affinity is another meaning of karma. When a man and woman in Japan meet and fall in love, commonly they will say to each other, "We must have known each other in previous lives." Western couples may not say such a thing, but they feel this same sense of affinity. What we in the West attribute to coincidence, the Asians attribute to affinity. Mysterious karma is an expression you will commonly hear. I remember I was driving Aitken Roshi to the airport in Honolulu after his wife Anne had died to pick up his brother-in-law for the service. We were talking, and he said, in Japan, karma is really known as mysterious affinities. It's really a lovely way of looking at it, isn't it? The work we're drawn to, the people who become our partners, the children that come into our lives, all of these things are the result of mysterious affinities, not a mechanical process of cause and effect, but something much more fluid and interactive, mysterious affinities that make us who we are. One thing depends upon another. This is a very interesting expression of the relative world. And relative has the sense of kinship as well, of course. My relatives, or as native peoples might say, all my relations. Relativity isn't cold and hard. There's something kin-like, family, familial. In any case, affinity and coincidence are surface manifestations of the organic nature of the universe, in which nothing occurs independently or from a specific set of causes, but rather everything is intimately related to everything else, and things happen by the tendencies of the whole in the context of particular circumstances. The law of karma expresses the fact that the entire universe is in equilibrium. This intimate interconnection is found in nature by biologists and physicists today, as it was once found by the Buddhist geniuses who composed Mahayana texts, particularly the Prajnaparamita, Perfection of Wisdom, and the Huaqian, Garland or Flowers Sutras. These are compendiums of religious literature that offer important tools for understanding the Dharma and thus understanding the precepts. The Heart Sutra, which condenses the Prajnaparamita into just a couple of pages, and it's the original Prajnaparamita is a voluminous text, begins with the words, this is a little different translation than what we may know it as, Avalokiteshvara, doing deep Prajnaparamita, clearly saw that all 5 skandhas are empty, transforming suffering and distress. Avalokiteshvara is the Bodhisattva of mercy, is what Aitken Roshi says, who, by his or her very name, expresses the fact that the truth not merely sets you free, it also brings you into compassion with others. In the Far East, the name is translated in 2 ways. The one who perceives the essential self at rest, that's Kanjizai, and the one who perceives the sounds of the world, the hearer of the cries of the world, and that is Kanon. Kanjizai, the one who perceives the self at rest, clearly sees that the skandhas, phenomena, and our perceptions of them are all without substance. This is the truth that liberates and transforms. Konzeon, or Kanon, the one who perceives the sounds of the world, in the setting of empty infinity, is totally free of self-preoccupation, and so is tuned to the suffering of other creatures. Kanjizai and Kanzayon are the same bodhisattva of compassion or mercy. Bodhisattva is a compound Sanskrit word that means enlightenment being, or wisdom being. There are 3 implications of the term: a being who is enlightened, enlightenment being; a being who is on the path of enlightenment; and one who enlightens beings. The whole of Mahayana metaphysics is encapsulated in this triple archetype. Avalokiteshvara is the Buddha from the beginning and also is on the path to realizing that fact. Moreover, this self-realization is not separate from the Tao, the way of saving others. For you and me, this means that saving others is saving ourselves. And saving ourselves is realizing what has always been true. As disciples of Shakyamuni Buddha, we exemplify these three meanings. Senzaki Nyogen Sensei used to begin his talks by saying, Bodhisattvas, as another speaker in his time would have said, ladies and gentlemen. But he would say, Bodhisattvas. Learning to accept the role of the Bodhisattva is the nature of Buddhist practice. This is in essence what we're here to do. To accept the role of the Bodhisattva in this life. Avalokiteshvara is not just a figure on the altar. He or she is sitting on your chair as you hear this or read this in the book. When you accept your merciful and compassionate tasks in a modest spirit, you walk the path of the Buddha. When the members of a Zen Buddhist center act together as bodhisattvas, they generate great power for social change. This is the Sangha as the Buddha intended it to be. The Huayan Sutras refine our understanding of the bodhisattva role in presenting the doctrine of interpenetration that I and all beings perfectly reflect and indeed are all people, animals, plants, and so on. The metaphor is the net of Indra, a model of the universe in which each point of the net is a jewel that perfectly reflects all other jewels. This model is made intimate in Zen study, beginning with our examination of the Buddha's own experience on seeing the morning star, when he exclaimed, I and all beings have at this moment attained the way. You are at ease with yourself when Kanjizai sits on your cushions, at ease with the world when Kanzeon listens through the hairs of your ears. You are open to the song of the thrush and the curse of the harlot, like Blake, who knew intimately the interpenetration of things. And here Aitken Roshi quotes Blake's amazing poem from Songs of Innocence and Experience, the Song of Innocence simply titled London. I wander through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind-forged manacles I hear. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn infant's tear and blights with plagues the marriage hearse. Those last two lines, he's talking about syphilis spread through the society by the unfortunate circumstance of young women taken into prostitution, and then men going to them and then going back to their families. Blake was very aware of the interpenetration. The hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. What a line. We are all of us interrelated, not just people, but animals and stones, clouds, trees. And as Blake wrote so passionately, what a mess we've made of the precious net of relationships. We rationalize ourselves into insensitivity about people, animals, plants, forging manacles of the mind, confining ourselves to fixed concepts of I and you, we and it, birth and death, being and time. This is suffering and distress. But if you can see that all phenomena are transparent, ephemeral, and indeed altogether void, then the thrush will sing in your heart, and you can show compassion to the prostitute. Experiencing emptiness is also experiencing peace, and the potential of peace is its unfolding as harmony among all people, animals, plants, and things. I think this is the foundation of Sangha, harmony among peoples, animals, plants, and things. The foundation of that is the experience of emptiness, the true foundation of Sangha. In any case, Aitken Roshi goes on, the precepts formulate this harmony, showing how the absence of killing and stealing is the very condition of mercy and charity. This is the middle way of Mahayana Buddhism. It is unself-conscious and so avoids perfectionism. It is unselfish and so avoids hedonism. Perfection is the trap of literal attachment to the precepts. And then he tells the story. A priest from Southeast Asia explained to us at Kokoan, the temple up near the University of Hawaii in Honolulu, that was the original home of Diamond Sangha Zen. Oh, actually, Kauai was probably the original home, and they got this place near the university on Oahu. Anyway, this priest from Southeast Asia was there and recounted to them that his practice consisted solely of reciting his precepts, hundreds and hundreds of them. That was his practice, reciting his precepts. To make his trip to the United States, he had to receive special dispensation in order to handle money and talk to women. Aitken Roshi says, surely this was a case of perfectionism. Hedonism, on the other hand, is the trap of ego indulgence that will not permit any kind of censor, overt or internal, to interfere with self-gratification. The sociopath, guided only by strategy to get his or her own way, is the extreme model of such a person. Certain walks of life are full of sociopaths. We could probably name a few very easily these days. In any case, but all of us can relate to that condition. Notice how often you manipulate other people. Where's your compassion? In the study of the precepts, compassion is seen to have two aspects, benevolence and reverence. Benevolence, when stripped of its patronizing connotations, is simply our love for those who need our love. Reverence, when stripped of its passive connotations, is simply our love for those who express their love to us. The model of benevolence would be the love of parent toward child, and the model of reverence would be the love of child toward parent. However, a child may feel benevolence toward parents, and parents reverence toward children. Between husband and wife, or friend and friend, these models of compassion are always in flux, sometimes mixed, sometimes exchanged. Seeing compassion in this detail enables us to understand love as it is, the expression of deepest consciousness directed in an appropriate manner. Wu Men uses the expression, the sword that kills, the sword that gives life, in describing the compassionate action of a great teacher. On the other hand, there is the love that says, don't do that. And on the one hand, there is the love that says, don't do that. And on the other hand, there is the love that says, do as you think best. It's the same love, now killing, now giving life. To one friend we may say, that's fine. To another we may say, that won't do. The two actions involved may be quite similar, but in our wisdom perhaps we can discern when to wield the negative and when the positive. Without this single realized mind, corruption can appear. I'm thinking of a teacher from India who is currently very popular, and this was, probably 30 years ago. In any case, he says, I know nothing about him except his many books. His writings sparkle with genuine insight, yet something is awry. There are sordid patches of anti-Semitism and sexism. Moreover, he does not seem to caution his students about cause and effect in daily living. What went wrong here? I think he chose a shortcut to teaching. My impression is that he underwent a genuine religious experience but missed taking the vital step-by-step training which in Zen Buddhist tradition comes after realization. This is one of the great virtues of Zen practice. After genuine religious experience, step-by-step training, that really helps us to mature and broaden and deepen and integrate what may be a slight glimpse into something much more profound as time goes on. This is a lifetime's work, and as Palolo Roshi used to say, it's a many lifetimes' work. That an initial Kensho experience, or to be passed on an initial koan, is the very beginning of beginnings. After this, we must commit to the ongoing work, which is sometimes frustrating, sometimes scary, always challenging, sometimes so wonderful you don't have words for it, but just to keep going with the aim of full realization, not being content with small gains or small insights, or stopping along the way thinking, oh, I get it. Blake has a great line, he has so many, but one that always stuck with me was, more is the cry of a mistaken soul, less than all cannot satisfy. So, Zhao Chu trained for over 60 years before he began to teach, a sobering example for us all. His first deep realization was at around the age of 20. His complete enlightenment said to have been about the age of 56. And then Zhao Chu continued working on himself, checking himself against the best teachers of his time, and didn't settle down and begin teaching till 80. A sobering example indeed. The religious path begins again with an experience of insight, and we must train diligently thereafter to become mature. And there's our task in a nutshell. One of my students taught me the Latin maxim, in corruptio optima pessima. In corruption, the best becomes the worst. For the teacher of religious practice, the opportunity to exploit students increases with his or her charisma and power of expression. Students become more and more open and trusting. The fall of such a teacher is thus a catastrophe that can bring social and psychological breakdown in the Sangha. I won't comment on this, but if you've been practicing for a long time in the West, you know these things have happened, and it is a sad story. This is not only a violation of common decency, but also of the worldview that emerges from deepest experience. You and I come forth as possibilities of essential nature, alone and independent as stars, yet reflecting and being reflected by all things. My life and yours are the unfolding realization of total aloneness and total intimacy. The self is completely autonomous, yet exists only in resonance with all other selves. Yun Men said, medicine and sickness mutually correspond. Medicine and sickness is another translation. Medicine and sickness cure each other. The whole universe is medicine. Where is the self? Medicine and sickness cure each other. The whole universe is medicine. Where is the self? I know of no koan, he writes, that points more directly to the net of Indra. Yun Men is engaged in the unfolding of universal realization, showing the interchange of self and other as a process of universal health. To see this clearly, you must come to answer Yun Men's question. What is? the self. Do you say there is no such thing? Who is saying that, after all? How do you account for the individuality of your manner, the uniqueness of your face? The 16 Bodhisattva precepts bring Yunmen's question into focus and give it context, the universe and its phenomenon. But while the cracker barrel philosopher keeps context outside, Yunmen is not such a fellow. Still, cultural attitudes must be given their due. As Western Buddhists, we are also Judeo-Christian in outlook, perhaps without even knowing it. Inevitably, we take the precepts differently, just as the Japanese took them differently when they received them from China, and the Chinese differently when Bodhidharma appeared. Where we would say a person is alcoholic, the Japanese will say he likes sake very much. The addiction is the same, the suffering is the same, and life is cut short in the same way, but the precept about substance abuse will naturally be applied one way by Japanese and another by Americans. It is also important to trace changes in Western society toward traditional matters over the past 20 years. So Aitken Roshi was saying this some 30 or so years ago. The Western Zen student is usually particularly sensitive to these changes. Christian and Judaic teachings may seem thin, and 19th century ideals that led people so proudly to celebrate Independence Day and to cheer the Stars and Stripes have all but died out. Now, in our time, this is so much more worse. It's almost impossible to grasp. Ultimate wrestling something. Millions of dollars being spent to tear up the lawn at the White House and build a net for free fall, whatever the wrestling or fighting is to take place, to celebrate our 250th anniversary. It's, my gosh, it's bread and circus, yeah, like the fall of Rome, bread and circus. The Colosseum was a beautiful building. They did some horrible things there. Here we go. Aitken Roshi continues, I do not dream about the president anymore. And when I talk to my friends, I find they don't either. The great leader is a hollow man. The law of the market cannot prove itself, and the nation-state mocks its own values. This loss of old concepts and images gives us unprecedented freedom to make use of fundamental virtues, grandmother wisdom of conservation, proportion, and decency to seek the source of rest and peace that has no east or west. It is not possible to identify this source specifically in words. The Zen teacher Sung San calls it the don't-know mind. He and I and all people who write and speak about Buddhism use Buddhist words and personages to identify that place, yet such presentations continually fall in upon themselves and disappear. We take our inspiration from the Diamond Sutra and other sutras of the Prajnaparamita tradition, which stress the importance of not clinging to concepts, even of Buddhahood. Wu-Tzu said, Shakyamuni and Maitreya are servants of another. I want to ask you, who is that other? After you examine yourself for a response to this question, you might want the Buddha and his colleagues to stay around and lend a hand. Perhaps they can inspire your dreams, and their words express your deepest aspirations. But if they are true servants, they will vanish any time they get in the way. We need archetypes, as our dreams tell us, to inspire our lives. As lay people together, we do not have a model of a priest as a leader, but we follow in the footsteps of a few great lay personages like Vimalakirti and Layman Pong and Yamada Roshi and Aitken Roshi and Kaplo Roshi too, who was a parent, really a lay person in so many ways, though he was ordained as a priest. I think for me, the recognition that lay practice is not a secondary practice, but its own beast that gives us constant motivation to deepen our understanding and to integrate whatever we know more fully into our life. There's no respite from that in lay practice. But we have models we can follow of people who've done a very good job with that. The 16 Bodhisattva precepts, too, are archetypes, skillful means for us to use in guiding our engagement with the world. They are not commandments engraved in stone, but expressions of inspiration written in something more fluid than water. Relative and absolute are altogether blended. Comments on the precepts by Bodhidharma and Dogen Zenji are eventually studied as koans, but our everyday life is a great multifaceted koan that we resolve at every moment, and yet never completely resolve. As Zen tradition has it, even Shakyamuni is only halfway there. We'll stop here and recite our great vows for all.